Hello.
Hello, Ollie. How are you?
How are you, Mario?
I'm good, very good. Very excited as usual about the Formula One news.
Yeah, not too much, but some interesting ones this week.
Some interesting ones, and we haven't had time to talk about something that's just happened in the last minutes, right before this call.
Mm.
Mugello has been approved as a possible GP for Formula One this year.
Okay.
So
Oh, that's a
it's
good one.
it's not confirmed yet. It's not confirmed yet,
hmm
but we just need to wait for the FIA approval, and
hmm
that would make Mugello the ninth GP of this year, right after Monza. That would be good, great. So far we can start talking about the calendar. To be honest,
Yep.
so calendar, we have 8 GPs already confirmed. The first eight
Yep.
GPS. So just
Yep.
to give the order, a double header in Austria, so basically 2 GPs in Austria. The first one is GP Austria, the second one is GP Estiria, I think it is the name. So right after those 2 races in Austria, we have the following race in Hungary. That's a normal GP in Hungary. Then
hmm
the first GP in Silverstone, that's going to be the GP Britain. And then a
hmm
second race in Silverstone 1 week later. That's going to be GP 17th anniversary
Yeah.
of Formula One.
70th.
17th.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so 70th anniversary of Formula One.
it's a good place to commemorate the anniversary of Formula One.
Yeah, where it started, Silverstone.
Yeah, and Silverstone never lets down, so never disappoints. So that's
Yeah.
good. So then after double header in Silverstone, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Spain, then GP Belgium, Spa, another
Yeah.
traditional
Yeah.
circuit, and then Monza. That would be the 8 confirmed GPs until the moment. But as I said in the beginning, there might be a ninth GP soon to be confirmed also in Italy.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be that would be hosted by Mugello.
Yeah.
So I don't know
I'd
what
love it to be at Imola.
Yeah, I don't know what the name of that GP would be, but interestingly,
mm
Mattia Binotto, so the
hmm
not president, the director, the manager director of Ferrari Formula One team, has given
hmm
the approval to Mugello, arguing that that would
hmm
be a great circuit to host another GP for the 1000th race for Ferrari Formula One team. I wouldn't be surprised to see the GP in Mugello named something like Ferrari's 1000 races GP, something like
Yeah.
that.
Or they can do the Imola trick. Yeah, San Marino trick of calling it the Imola. San Marino Grand Prix rather than Italy.
Yeah, even
Well,
though
that's
it's
what they
not
can
in
do with
summary.
Imola. So
Yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, what do you think of the calendar? Which teams or drivers do you think are gonna benefit the most from this calendar so far?
Well, talking to somebody earlier, they said this start of season will benefit Verstappen because Verstappen and Red Bull is always strong at Austria.
Correct.
They're normally strong at Hungary.
Mm-hmm.
Silverstone is normally a Mercedes track, but then Red Bull are there and thereabouts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then Spain is normally a good track for Red Bull.
For Mercedes as
And
well.
yeah, bit of
Mm.
both. And then the rest is sort of Mercedes territory. But Verstappen will be there or thereabouts if they have the car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I will also add Spa and Monza would be beneficial for Ferrari for them at least in the last years. Obviously, it could depend this year, but at least in the last years, we've seen higher power output from the Ferrari engine. So in Spa,
Apart from this
they've been
year,
dominating. This year, slightly different. Yeah, we haven't seen
they have less power.
we haven't seen a huge performance in terms of power. So things
hmm
can switch to Mercedes side in those circuits where there are long straights, such as Spa, Monza, and Mugello. If it becomes one of the GPs this year, that could be beneficial for Mercedes as well. But maybe Red Bull could benefit from it as well, because it's true that there's a very long straight. It's like more than 1 kilometer, I think. But then there are many chicanes, many slow corners with where the traction is very much needed. So both Red Bull and Mercedes would be probably very similar in terms of performance in Mugello.
It's a very mixed track. It's full of mid to slow speed corners, Mugello, but then has a whopping great straight on it. Well, sort of straight, a slightly curvy straight.
Yeah.
Would be an interesting track, because in MotoGP it's the fastest top speed track of any track they go to. I think it's something stupid, like 360 kilometers an hour they get to, or something insane like that.
Yeah.
So Mugello's mad with MotoGP, and then they have a really stamp on the brake first corner.
Yeah.
So big overtaking opportunity there. Also, high risk of getting it wrong, and very few runoffs. It's all gravel, pretty much.
Yeah. That's gonna be interesting. That's gonna bring back the spirit of those old school circuits where the runoffs are gravel. There's no pavement. It's just gravel. So you make a mistake and you screw it up.
And then with going on with the calendar, they're saying that might be a double header at Sochi, which I really hope there isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a terrible track, but there's nothing to it.
You don't want to watch a second race there, and I feel the same. And maybe one race is not a terrible circuit, not within my favorite ones, but still, I wouldn't like to see two races, especially in 2 weeks, 2 weeks in a row.
Maybe what they should do, the Bernie Eccleston idea of putting some sprinklers on. So if the one race is dry, they have a sprinkler system. They just turn it on at some point during the race, just to make it more interesting.
So, any other news about the calendar for the following races?
So you have Imola being talked about, Singapore and Japan being in serious threat because they're getting a second peak, especially in Japan. And then Singapore, I'm not sure of the reasons behind it. I didn't read too much into it, but they're in threat. So it might just be based a Europe calendar with some races in America and a couple in Asia. But they're still trying to figure things out, so anything could happen.
Okay. Any talks about the USA and Mexico GPs?
Yeah, USA, I think that they're planning to go ahead with. Well, USA already started their NASCAR and IndyCar season.
Yeah.
So they've already started racing there. And Mexico should be going ahead.
Mexico will definitely host a GP with audience, with spectators in the circuit. So that's a controversial statement or announcement.
Yeah.
Hopefully that can be possible in a few months, but it's the first circuit, I think, that's announced they're gonna host the GP only with public.
Yeah. Well, Mexico's got the second highest amount of spectators during the Grand Prix, just behind Silverstone.
Yeah.
So without spectators, they will lose loads of money.
Yeah, hopefully that can be possible. Wow. We don't know anything about Brazil either, or Abu Dhabi. We don't want to hear anything about Abu Dhabi. But I'm pretty sure whatever the calendar is gonna look like, Abu Dhabi will surely be there to finish the championship.
So what I've heard they want to do is they want to do one bunch in Europe, then one bunch in America, to do Canada, USA, Mexico, Brazil. So
Brazil.
go down, and then go to the Eurasia, and do Baku, Bahrain, and Abu Dhabi, if I remember it correctly.
And Russia, I guess.
And Russia, yes, of course. But they want to do Europe, America, Eurasia is their idea.
Yeah. Honestly,
But
I wonder why they don't do that every single year. Because that's the easiest in terms of logistics. I don't see, maybe it goes beyond my reflection on this, but I don't see any point why that's not the typical calendar every single year.
The only issue with it is this time of year. Because in Brazil, if it's summer there, if you go to Canada, it's winter.
Yeah. Although
So
we've
they
seen,
have to take that into account.
and I think they should take it into account even more, because we've seen a few races not cancelled, but about to be cancelled because of the typhoon and monsoon rains in Suzuka. So the seasonal reason is important as well, but maybe they should allow for more rainy races, which is also very spectacular. And as an alternative, they could schedule the calendar based on the seasons, allowing for some rainy races but still possible to race. So instead of racing in Suzuka while the typhoon season, race there on dry conditions, and then race in Silverstone or Monza or any other circuit in Europe with rain, where the rain is not as huge as in Suzuka or in Brazil, for example.
Yeah, but it's impossible to predict that. You can get roughly the times, but for example, like last year, they wanted to move the 1000th Grand Prix to Silverstone, but it would have been in April when it was April showers, and they didn't want it to be the risk of doing it in April showers, so they never went ahead. It was in China instead. But it's stuff like that. They just don't want to take the risk of doing that.
Well, anyway, we'll see what happens with the rest of the calendar this year, though. Because of all the crisis and all the time restrictions, I guess the seasons and the rain, everything will be slightly less taken into account because they just want to race. So next topic. So something you sent me this week that's very interesting. I had never thought of reserve drivers. So I'll let you explain.
So with the reserve drivers, it's a really interesting one. So the risk is that if their main driver, one of the two, with a team, if there are two drivers, one of them gets ill, they have to do a backup of a reserve driver. And that is a slight issue for McLaren and Racing Point, because with their engine deal, their reserve drivers are all shared, and their reserve drivers are Stoffel van Dorn and Esteban Gutierrez. So if somebody from Mercedes, so if Bottas gets ill, Norris gets ill, and Racing Point, Sergio Perez gets ill, then the issue is it's two reserve drivers for 3 teams. And then you have for Red Bull Sebastian Buemi, who I'd quite like to see him back in F1 to see how he gets on. But this whole reserve driver, we might get Kubica to have a race in this Alfa Romeo, which I would love to see him in a half-decent car, how he gets on.
Yeah.
But the reserve drivers might play a massive role in this year's championship. And then there's what I was thinking about today is if a reserve driver is put in at the start of the season and they do well, will the team swap the drivers back, or will they keep the reserve driver?
Has that ever happened before?
Where a reserve driver comes in?
Yeah. In the middle of the season, I mean.
Yeah. So you had Schumacher's when he broke his leg in '99, and then Mika Salo came in, and then there's been some other. Then there's obviously '94 when Senna sadly died, and David Coulthard came in. So there's been a few incidents where drivers come in midway through a season and just got on and done the other driver's duties. And then going back years and years, there's loads, so 70s and 80s.
Yeah, well, that was a different story. But I mean, with Mika Salo, for example, Mika Salo replaced Schumacher, but he didn't continue with Ferrari the following year. So has there ever been any case in which the reserve driver has replaced a driver halfway in the season, and then because of his performance has continued in the team as a permanent driver?
Alexander Wirtz, 97, if I remember correctly. So he came in to replace, I think it was Alesi who was injured. And he impressed so much that Benetton gave him a racing seat for 98. And then the other one is De La Rosa, McLaren. Pedro De La Rosa replaced Montoya.
Yeah.
And he impressed hugely.
Yeah.
He, unfortunately, because McLaren managed to get Lewis Hamilton and Alonso in the next year, he didn't keep his seat, but he still stayed a part of McLaren as a reserve driver.
Yeah. And just something, a bit of information about that. The first race that Pedro de la Rosa replaced Montoya, that was in Bahrain 2005. He still owns the fastest ever lap in Bahrain, in Formula One, in a race, I mean. In a race.
What, even faster than today's? Okay.
In a race. Not, I mean, today's cars are faster for the qualifying for the pole position. Yeah. But during the race, the fastest ever lap, I think it's still, if I'm not wrong, at least it was until 2019, on Pedro de la Rosa, 2005.
Yeah.
That's a bit
I can kind of see how that would work. Yeah, I can kind of see how it would work, because back then they had refueling, so they could have a light fuel load and absolutely go hell for leather and not care about the tyres.
Yeah.
So random question, going off topic. With the cars with the groove tyres, how much faster do you think they would be if they had the proper slicks rather than the groove tyres?
So you know,
do you think they'll be able to match today's cars?
So you mean the 2005 cars with...
Yeah.
This is funny. 1 month ago, during the main point of the lockdown, there was an interview between Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz on Instagram. They were just having a call as us, but neither of us is Fernando Alonso or Carlos Sainz. And they were talking about that. And Alonso said he thinks cars would probably be around half a second faster, or even 1 second faster, with the tires that the Formula One cars today use. So that would be my answer, I guess.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you think how fast they were back then. Like the Monza lap only got beaten last year, I think, or 2 years ago.
Yeah, last year.
The Monza qualifying lap.
Yeah.
So if you think if they went another second faster with a slick tyre, they were insanely fast.
Yeah. Not only insanely fast, but it was just more fun to see, because what we've been talking about a few times, cars today are are very big.
Yeah.
So they look like trucks. So when you see those tiny cars in 2005, 6, and those years, you see like a very small insect going super fast around the circuit. And like cars were very agile, and it's just different. It's just for the show and I don't know, from the visual perspective, it's just more fun to watch those cars going flat out.
Also, the difference in driving style was impressive back then, because today's cars, they have to be very delicate with the steering and smooth and precise, and each driver has a slight variation on that, but they are roughly the same. Back then, you had Alonso with his crazy understeer style.
Yep.
You had Kimi Räikkönen and Schumacher who drove with the back end out, and then you had Button who was ultra smooth with the controls and everything. It still amazes me Alonso's driving style. There's a video breaking it down on how it shouldn't work.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it just shouldn't work, but it does for him.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of intelligent to see that those tires with that with the design of that car, for some reason, that driving style sometimes works, and finding that trick that was just I don't know, something impressive.
Right, we've gone off topic.
Yeah, let's get back to the topic. So anyway, we're talking about the reserve drivers. I don't think. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see if any reserve driver can replace permanently another driver because of their performance, and that's gonna be a great commitment to the team, because races this year are gonna be 1 week after the other, after the other. So if one reserve driver jumps into the car, that driver is likely going to be driving for a few more races. So we'll see.
Especially because if they say it's 14 days it lasts for, or it's even longer, that's 14 days incubation period, then driver can be out for a month easily.
Yeah.
And then on the unlikely circuit for top teams, it's very, very unlikely. But let's say Verstappen goes ill with COVID and Buemi comes in and he wins the first 3 races. What do Red Bull do? Do they let Buemi stay there because he's in the championship contention, or do they bring back Max Verstappen back?
Yeah. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. Honestly, we don't want anyone to get infected by the virus.
Oh, of course not. No.
But in case bad luck happens, we want to keep seeing performance and show, big show in the team, in the sport.
Yeah. FIA have said anyone who goes down ill, they will not cancel the race. So if a team member goes ill and the whole team has to go in quarantine, they will not cancel the race. They'll keep going.
Yeah. That's a controversial opinion, but yeah. That's gonna put more pressure on the teams. So
I think they'll be much stricter on regulating where people go and what they do. They will be sort of where they sleep, track where they sleep. No other detours.
Yeah. So the reserve driver issue is not a small one because of all you've said, but there's another point. With such a compressed calendar, reserve drivers are usually engaged into different championships. So Stoffel Van Dorn, for example, he's racing for Formula E. I have no idea right now if there's gonna be races in Formula E this year, but that's one example. Some other reserve drivers are or have some sort of commitment with other teams and championships. So that's going to be problematic for the Formula One teams should one of the drivers be infected by the virus. So the last topic or the last hot news that I've seen this week is the unfortunate announcement that the W Series, this is not closely related to Formula One, but slightly related. So the W Series, those Formula Championship where only women can participate, has been cancelled this year, unfortunately. The good news is that they've confirmed that they're gonna be the support races for the GP in the USA and in Mexico in 2021 for Formula One. Personally, I think that's great news. I've seen some races last year of the W Series. I think that's a great championship. It's been they fostered the championship wonderfully. The structure of the championship and the overall idea is pretty good. and I personally want the championship to keep happening, and I want to keep watching those races.
Yeah, they're good races. That's well formatted. It's a great idea to get people into the championship, into racing. My one issue with it is there's no other sort of prize fund for any other driver. It's just women drivers who get this drive in a Formula 3000 car, and that's my issue with it, because there's so many good drivers out there, men and women drivers, but the opportunity is not shared.
And obviously there are so many money restrictions and development restrictions of the car. So it's not like a standard championship in I don't know, World Rally Car, Formula One, World Endurance Championship, where each team put their money and they can develop the car with some other restrictions. But in the W Series, restrictions are all. So basically, you can't develop the car. You have the same car for everyone. I'm not sure if this is correct, but I think they even swap chassis from race to race with other teams, which is great for the show.
Yeah.
And engineers. It's great for the show. But it's true that there's not enough room for the drivers to improve, or to not improve, but to promote to more difficult categories if the car doesn't get developed. I don't know. Hopefully, some other teams in Formula One can keep an eye on the drivers. We saw other teams.
Chadwick?
Yeah, Jamie Chadwick. Hopefully, other teams from Formula One or any other categories can, I don't know, can hire her, can keep an eye on her and on other drivers. Sort of thing. Anyway, I don't have any other hot news. This has been a very quiet week. We don't have anyone watching the live right now, so I guess we don't have any questions, unfortunately. No. Is there any other topic I've missed? Any news?
There was news that came out about 20 minutes. News that just popped up on my phone now, the little notification thing. Mercedes are looking into other motorsports now because of the budget caps. And one of those motorsports includes IndyCar. So you might have Mercedes and Ferrari in IndyCar.
That would be great. I mean, that's great for me. I'm already in the USA, so for me, this, in terms of schedule, perfect.
Yeah.
I saw Ferrari are already in talks with IndyCar for 2022. So the fact that they've already mentioned a date, a year in which they might get into the competition, could be scary for Formula One.
But the idea behind it is because of the massive budget, they have to try and spread out their racing thing, not to make people redundant. So that's why they're looking into other motorsports, so they don't have to make members of their team redundant for these budget caps.
Mercedes are being very empathic with the employees with the decision. So I don't know. Hopefully that can happen.
Yeah, and then they also want to expand their fan base in America. Great opportunity. You go into IndyCar, your fan base goes miles if you don't do anything wrong.
Of course. Well, we could talk about IndyCar some other time, but apparently teams are very confident that they can develop and build a car suitable for the championship with good performance.
But with these budget caps for F1, you wouldn't never think of it. It might improve other motorsports. So you might get bigger grids than other motorsports with these budget caps in F1.
If two teams decide to go to IndyCar, we can see a wave of teams switching to IndyCar apart from those two. So Red Bull is another team with a great budget. And Red Bull is one of those teams that they join any party.
Yeah.
So that would be great. So no more news or discussions?
Not really, not this week at least.
not this week, but we are all looking forward so much to the beginning of the championship this year. It's only
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Well, Oliver, thanks a lot as usual for your time,
Yeah,
and hopefully we'll have more news next week and viewers.
yeah, hopefully not. If not, we can talk more about motorsports and other bits and pieces, try and get people on and ask their questions.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that conversation about professional drivers is gonna be pretty interesting.
Oh, I might get into trouble for that one. Let's see.
Let's give it a try. Thanks a lot, Oliver, and see you next week.
See you, Mario.
Bye bye.